we're just kissing sisters around here then, huh? That's the way it works? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Now, first of all, let's get it out of the way. Hang on, Sloopy. Sloopy, hang on. O-H-I-O. Thank you. Bless you, boys. Bless you. I will go back to hating you immediately now. But bless you for getting the job done last night.
It was close.
Well, it was close to a push.
Oh, we had it at 8. We had it at 8.
Okay. Yeah, we had it at 8. I thought it was higher than that. And then John was like, no, it's 8. I'm like, hey, even better. But then late, I was nervous because a push, while it wouldn't have been disastrous, I still would have been within 1 with 3 games left.
Wow.
Now, level, square.
Jeez.
Welcome to the bottom. John,
what happened?
Oh, you think that's bad. Go check on how Ryan Shell.
I mean, he's clear of the bottom, so I'm sure he's doing fine.
He's clear of the bottom. But Ryan Shell is now below 500. He was winning the league, going away at points this season. I mean, separation. He has dropped to below 500 11 games back.
He's 0-5 this week.
I've never seen anything like it. I've never, I somehow think that's worse. I got to be honest. Like, if Ryan had any, if he was a man of character, he would come in and take some of this punishment too.
Well, no, he did what
the
he had to
F
do.
Apart. Never seen anything like it. But yes, big turn of events last night. The bad news is Paul Valley is probably safe. He's up 2 games with 3 games to play. Not officially safe, but probably safe. But John Proctor, my knight in shining armor. My guy, John Proctor. Oh, the day of my daughter's wedding. Oh, I'm so excited. John Proctor joining me at the bottom of the table. So there's hope. There's hope.
I gotta. Where was he? Like, his fall from grace has to be pretty bad.
Oh, he
too.
definitely last night told me he thought he was safe. And I don't know exactly when, but he believed he had been safe. And then all of a sudden looked up and he was like, what the hell? Yeah.
He went 1-4 this week.
That's too bad. Just too bad for John Proctor. Well,
5 last week.
3 games left. Race to the finish. We'll see how it plays out. But yes, bless you to Ohio State as they pull out the bomb at the end of the game to put it on ice. And then thank you to Notre Dame for still having 1 timeout left so that Ohio State had to kick the field goal and couldn't just take 3 knees and have the game over. I'm like doing all the math in my head when all this is playing out. I'm like, well, I guess I'm just not getting the cover. It is what it is. And then all of a sudden, you should have seen my house. You should have seen my house when Will Howard tosses it up to Jeremiah Smith. All of a sudden, it all hits me in one moment.
You jumped?
You
did a backflip?
No, I didn't do a backflip, but I made a noise. I was terrified that I had woken up my sons. I heard a noise upstairs. I'm like, oh, no. Oh, thank God. Bless you. Bless you, bless you. Ohio State national champions. Now, a little bit more interesting, the impact it had on our bowl pick'em.
Yeah.
Where when I say
or
we're
lack
kissing
thereof.
sisters, it's because we got a tie. Now, we set this up so that there can't be a tie.
Right.
We set it up so that you got to have a total points in the championship game so that if there is a tie, we have a tiebreaker. And the damnedest thing played out as that's indeed there was a tie. And that happens. No biggie, right? Like, all good. Until you go to last night, you can't check to see what everybody's picks are until after the game has begun. Not even the moderator of the groups, not even Griffin and I could go, or Brian Powell could go check to see what everybody's picks were. So, game starts. I got a text from Brian Powell. Unfortunately, I was at trivia last night, so you can't have your phone out. At one point, I think the boys noticed, I looked down at my phone, and I see that I have a text from Brian Powell. And for other reasons, I've been a little bit worried recently, but it's a long story I don't want to get into. But I see I have a text from Brian Powell. I'm like, all right, I'm going to check it. And then they're all like, dude, put your phone away. And I see what he's saying. He's saying, hey, man, you might want to come up with a second tiebreaker. The guys picked it the exact same way. And there's nothing I can do. I'm at trivia. Like, I can't abandon the team. We got our ass kicked last night.
Oh, so
we got the final, and we still got our ass kicked last night. It was a brutal game. But I can't abandon the team. I can't walk outside and go start trying to text everybody. It just doesn't work that way. So I'm like, well, I guess if Ohio State wins, then we're going to have a tie. That's just going to be the end of it. And that's exactly what we have. John in Little Rock, John Keller, and Ryan Flanders, who I assume still lives in Bel Air. That's the last place I knew him to live, was Ryan in Bel Air. Congratulations to you boys. It's a $350 pot, correct? So they'll be splitting it $175 each to both of the fellas. Griffin.
Yeah, I'll make sure I send that today.
What's that?
I'll send it today. Yes. So
I was worried that Griffin was going to say something like, "Well, we should pick the Senior Bowl," like some nonsense thing.
Well,
what?
That's not a bad idea.
No, it's definitely a bad idea.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that.
And I can get in too, and
no,
I can have a chance.
No. Congratulations to the fellas. And again, the big winner, of course, is Helping Up Mission is $350. By the way, speaking of which, and this is apropos of nothing. My contact at the Target in White Marsh is no longer there. So if anybody has a contact that would help hook us up, I'm just going to make some cold calls this week to various big box stores. But if anybody has a hookup, knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that works at preferably a big box store, but anywhere where they sell toiletries and underpants, that's what we need. And we have a lot of money to spend, but we've liked to stretch that money a little bit further over the years, and that's what the folks at Target. And I'm sure if I go over there and just introduce myself, and somebody over there will be very helpful, I have no doubt. But that was startling news last week when I was like, we got to get this done. I'll just call over to my friend. And my friend's like, she said, yeah, sorry, I'm not there anymore. And I said, well, can you give me the name of the person that I would? She was like, I actually don't know. I said, great. She was like, hang on, I could probably. I'm like, if you send me. But so we might still she might still get me in touch with somebody that'll get me know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. But if you know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody, we could probably use that small assist in this process. So the important part, money's raised. We're gonna spend it. I promise you. It's gonna go to the folks at Helping Up Mission. We just like to stretch it a little bit further. We just like to make it go a little bit further than the money that we have, which is a little bit north of $3,000. So thank you all for everything that you did. And if you still are inclined to donate for some reason, please, by all means. We haven't been able to spend it yet, so we can still do that. All right, so coming up on the program today, we do this every year when the season ends. We catch up with our friend Brian McFarland from Russell Street Report. You know him as Raven Salary Cap on Twitter. He's the guy that knows all of it. He's the guy that will give us the entire breakdown. What's the reality? Can the Ravens afford Ronnie Stanley? If they're going to afford Ronnie Stanley, what would that mean that they would have to lose out on? Everybody's losing their minds about Mark Andrews. Well, it's not about Sunday. It's just like in general. You can't be spending this much money on Mark Andrews. Well, one, I don't think they would. I would think that they would go back to the well and try to get a deal done that gives them a bit of cap savings at this point. But this notion that whatever happened on Sunday, you're just going to toss aside the guy that just caught 10 touchdowns. Like, there's nothing that this city likes doing more than just, well, yeah. It was like when Torrey Smith did it. I'm like, you guys realize he just caught 10 touchdowns. You're mad because you think he should have broken up the interception that Joe Flacco threw, which was a dreadful throw. Dreadful. But, again, we're not allowed to criticize, the quarterback. He threw a dreadful ball, just tossed it up into the end zone. In your world, you believe that Torrey Smith could have gone up and broken it up. And the answer is, like, maybe. I've tried talking to a million receivers about it afterwards. Like, maybe? Maybe he could have. Maybe.
For the same way Bateman should have broke up Lamar's interception, too.
Right. There you go. I mean, that one, at least what you're really angry about is that Torrey appeared to give up on trying in that moment. But again, he caught 10. Like this thing that we lose sight of. Anyway, we'll talk about all that with Brian McFarland. Mark Clayton will join us. We'll get his thoughts on how the Ravens season came.
If Torrey should have been able to break up.
Stop it. Its untimely demise. Our buddy Patrick Stevens will join us. We'll talk Terps and college hoops. By the way, then again, things just so great around here. Like we go.
They won.
We go from no. I'm not talking about that. We go from the Ravens loss to Anthony Santander departing, and then I was excited to watch the Maryland women yesterday.
Oh yeah, that didn't.
Oh no, it's all of it. We learned before the game Bree
Right.
McDaniel was done for the season. They get absolutely. I mean, from the jump, it was never competitive against Texas. They get demolished 89-51. And that's not a misleading score. In fact, if it's a misleading score, it might be misleading the other way. It was never competitive. Never. And then Cheyenne Sellers gets hurt during the course of the game on top of it. So, great. Anyway, we'll talk to Patrick Stevens about the Terps men who, to Griffin's point, did win.
They did.
Sure, they had 4 unwatchable possessions down the stretch that allowed Nebraska to tie the game up. I mean, sure, that happened, but they won, legally speaking. And we'll do 5 plays for the final time a little bit later on this year as well. So all that coming up on the program today. Do just want to spend 1 second. Look, congratulations to Ohio State. The playoff was great. That's the part that we're not going to say out loud because the games early on were not competitive, and so we're just going to complain about that part and miss out that, like, on the whole, getting a month of this was awesome for football fans. Getting a month's worth of relevant football games at a time where it was great. No one asked for 12 teams. We all wanted 8. 8 was fine, and we still don't need 12 teams, but we're going to get more. It's going to inevitably be 16. Again, I think I don't know how much you guys have been paying attention to, like a couple of the talking head doofuses, Paul Feinbaum and Joel Klatt, have been going on that Army Navy needs to move. I don't think it's totally possible they're just doing that on their own. It's possible. I don't know either of those guys well enough. But it comes off a little coordinated. It comes off more like there are people inside of college football that are trying to put pressure on Army and Navy to move off that date so that they can play a playoff game on that date. I find it hard to believe they'll actually do it. The Heisman Trophy is actually the reason why I find it harder to believe. I think they would bully Army. They're so detached from reality. And by the way, these two guys have made such bad faith arguments like, oh, they're getting pinched. Like, no, have you looked at the TV ratings? This country loves Army Navy. They're getting pinched. There's just so much going on. Stop it. But what's really happened was college football was mad that they had to share a Saturday with NFL games this year. And the NFL, sure as F, is not giving up any of their dates. They've said, hey, look, this is the way it's always worked. For years, once we got to mid-December, we had the right to put games on Saturday. We're not taking anything away from you. You're trying to infringe upon our territory. We've always done this. This isn't the NBA being mad that we're playing games on Christmas. This has always been the case. So it feels like people within college football are saying, well, how do we fix this? How do we get we don't want to go up against the NFL. Of course, they shouldn't want to go up against the NFL. So what do we do about that? And the answer would be to try to start the playoff 1 week earlier. But that would be going up against Army-Navy. Now, I don't think, again, these people are so detached from reality and so cold and heartless that I have no doubt that they would say, sorry, go screw. Here, you want, listen to Joel Klatt. He says you guys should play week 0. So you want a solution, go play week 0. I still don't think it'll happen. And And we can argue it's because they shouldn't be bullying Army-Navy. They shouldn't be. It's the best football game of the year. It's the only football game all year that an average person would be interested in that doesn't even give a rat's ass about football. But the Heisman Trophy ceremony is the same day. And I believe that the parties within college football understand how important the Heisman is to the general interest in college football. Every week, that trophy drives conversation about the sport. Every week. Teams that aren't good stay relevant because of that trophy. Colorado.
They were good.
They weren't.
They won a lot of games.
They won games. They were good-ish. How to go for them. Thankfully, they had all their guys for their bowl game. Worked out really well.
Should have, yeah.
Christ. But that's what happens. That trophy is so important that a bad LSU team 2 years ago could stay relevant because can Jaden Daniels win the Heisman? Baylor wasn't winning a national championship with Robert Griffin III, but they were relevant all throughout the season because of the Heisman. The Heisman keeps more fan bases interested, vested. To be fair, none of those teams are, when I say bad, they're not Maryland. Maryland's not winning a Heisman. But they're not winning a national championship, and it keeps more programs that aren't winning a national championship invested and relevant and amped and celebrating the sport. And the teams that sometimes it's just the best player on the best team. Sometimes it's just whoever the best player on the Alabama team is that year. Mark Ingram, Devontae Smith, whoever. The Heisman Trophy is part of the fabric of college football. And part of that is you get all the players to go. The least interesting Heisman ceremony ever was the one when Devontae Smith won, and it was during COVID, and no one cared. I would think they're not going to F that up. Oh, I think they'd be happy to F up Army-Navy. I really do. They're that stupid. But I don't think they're going to F up the importance of the Heisman Trophy ceremony. So I don't think they're going to, I mean, maybe they'd say we got to move the Heisman Trophy ceremony back 3 weeks or whatever to the first Saturday where there's no football, but then you run the risk of it being up against an NFL game. Like, you've owned that night with a trophy ceremony. I find it hard to believe that they're going to screw that up. But they screw up a lot of things. How can the college football playoff be better? Yeah, I would prefer them not to have games on against NFL games. In hindsight, the question might be, why didn't you play a game on Wednesday night that week? And you would say, well, that gives one team the advantage. They have 3 extra days of rests. Or 2, even if you played Wednesday, Friday. Okay. And it's not always going to be like this year there was a late Thanksgiving that kind of screwed everything up. Not every year will you have that late of a Thanksgiving. Every year, every calendar is going to be different. How would you make it better? Try to get those 2 games away from competing against the NFL would be a good way to try to make it better. I think most of us would prefer that. But it's imperfect. And that's okay. It was a good start. I think moving forward, we all agree that you don't need to be giving the winners of these also-ran leagues a bye in the first round. It was inherently unfair to Oregon that they had to face Ohio State in the second round. Not because they would have won the national championship otherwise. They were always going to have to beat the best teams. But because that's not what you really want. You don't want, in the name of fairness, to have those games that early. But in the end, playoff was great. It was great. It was great to have a month's worth of competitive football games that mattered. And I am not going to be surprised when they go to at least 16. They are flirting. There are people in the sport that are throwing out 20.
64?
No.
Yeah?
They didn't need 12, but it was still entertaining. All right. Griffin, today's show is brought to you by the CIAA tournament. Can you tell everybody all about the return of that event?
That's right. Baltimore is welcoming the excitement of the Food Line CIAA men's and women's basketball tournament at CFG Bank Arena from February 25th through March 1st. Your tickets are available. Get them now at Ticketmaster.com. Again, the Food Line CIAA men's and women's basketball tournament at CFG Bank Arena, February 25th through March 1st.
Going to mention how I just scored a paper football touchdown with the remote? You going to mention that? You going to mention that? Hanging right off the table? That was impressive.
Yeah, you got lucky.
All right.
You can do it again?
We do this every year. Unfortunately, we're doing it much earlier than I wanted to. Every year when the Ravens season comes to an end, we catch up with a friend of ours to kind of lay out an off-season primer. What does this look like moving forward for this team, and what might the next Ravens team look like? Joining us now here on GCR, friend of ours. You, of course, follow him on social at Ravens Salary Cap, and you see his work at RussellStreetReport.com. He is our buddy Brian McFarland, and he's back with us now here on GCR. Brian, it's Glenn. I wish we weren't having this conversation, but I always appreciate you taking the time for us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I concur with that. It would be nice to have this, 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, and then who cares what the next offseason really looks like at that point.
It is what it is, man. Nothing that you can do about it. That's the reality. All right, Brian, let's dive into the big headlines for this team. We begin with Ronnie Stanley because it seems like the offseason kind of starts there. I can't fathom the answer is just let Ronnie Stanley walk. I can't fathom. Now, I know it's not that easy, but I can't fathom that the answer is just we're moving on from Ronnie Stanley the way that we thought it might have been a year ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah, he's going to be an interesting evaluation to me because of obviously the injury history. He'll be 31 next year, which is not terribly old for an offensive tackle. And then what are your options? Are you going to move the right tackle over to left tackle? Should Rosengarten stay where he is? He really seemed to thrive there, but do they even know if he can play left tackle? And then you're trying to find a right tackle. So, it's going to be interesting. He is probably, I think he is the best free agent offensive tackle out there. So that makes it, there could be a market. This present deal averaged 20 a year. Does a 31-year-old coming off with his injury history get that again? That probably is market value for a 31-year-old left tackle, very good left tackle. But that injury history, is going to give teams pause, give the Ravens pause, I'm sure. He seems to want to stay. The Ravens, love him. Seems like they're going to want him to stay, but they got to find that right price point.
What would the franchise tag be for?
Franchise tag would be the franchise tag would be over $25 million. The transition tag would be in the 22 to 23 million range. I think that's too rich for him, because sometimes that sets the number,
right.
Right. And,
and I guess I ask it in the way, Brian, like you and I both know, the Ravens have never wanted to use a tag just to keep a player for a year. They have always said, and it's not always worked out, but they've always said, we use the tag when we intend to keep the player. I wonder if based on that, there's any world where they would consider a one-time tag because of the injury history to say, we still feel like we have a window right now, but we aren't sure if a long-term deal is the smartest thing to do.
Yeah, I would think and they've never used, I don't recall that they've ever used the transition tag. This would be the time I would think they would do it, given that they're going to have a tight cap. It's only going to save you $3 million, but I don't think, that gives them the option to match, no draft pick compensation. But if they're having trouble coming to a price point, then letting somebody else do some negotiating and then swooping in and saying, okay, well, that's a good number for us, we'll do it, or that's too much, we'll let you walk.
Boy, if they do, they got a whole nother conversation, because obviously Patrick McCary, of course, is a free agent as well, and I guess that's the one that I would say, if there is someone that I worry has simply priced themselves out, that might be the one, is Patrick McCary.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he had a very reasonable 4-year deal. He was, considered the swing man, the sixth man, if you want to use the basketball reference. But obviously he started every game this year. He was up and down. I don't know if they'll look to go younger there. My sense is, as you said, he's probably like some other guards have over the last couple of years, being Powers. And the guy that went to the Jets last year, his name is escaping me.
John Simpson or Morgan?
Yeah, Simpson.
John Simpson.
I mean, obviously they got more than we ever dreamed they would get. So if McCary fits into that, into that same timeline, I guess we'll say, then he's probably gone as well.
And then the Pat Ricard conversation, right? Like, it feels like if you're Pat Ricard, I don't know that the grass is going to be greener. Like, I don't know what the market is, but I also can understand a team that is up against the cap saying, look, we just don't know if we have the luxury of paying actual dollars to a fullback instead of just going and trying to find our next Patrick Ricard. I keep leaning back to it feels like there's not going to be such a robust market that this should work out, but I don't know, man. Like, I could see a team just sort of saying this isn't an area where we can be afford to spend money.
Yeah, I mean, the last time he hit the free agent market, there was not a market for him, and he came back at a much lesser price than I think anybody dreamed. I guess one good thing is the Chargers, and obviously with the Harbaugh and the same offense that we used to run here, and the guy who discovered basically Ricard. They have their own Patrick Ricard. They have their own defensive lineman turned fullback. So I guess from that sake, that's good, because I could see that being the team. Otherwise, it would go after him, But because like I said, Greg Roman pretty much invented both of those guys. But yeah, I think there's a decent chance, more than decent chance. I don't what percentage you want to put on it, that he'll be back, because I mean, it's just not it's not a spot that some teams don't even use a fullback. So your market is going to be constricted based on that.
All right, he is Brian McFarland, Russell Street Report at Ravens Salary Cap. He's with us here on GCR. Brian, the two guys that stand out when we look, I guess let's get this out of the way. I think it's safe to assume Marcus Williams will not be a Baltimore Raven moving forward.
Yeah, so that's already pretty much preordained when they redid the contract adjustment back at the beginning of the month. I'm not sure if this is something he agreed to, or if this is something that they had an automatic conversion right in their contract, but instead of having to wait for $12 million after June 2nd, or after June 1st, on June 2nd, they converted it. So they did get immediately $9.9 million in cap savings. They'll get the other 2.1 after June 1st. So that's really helpful, because they only have about 14 million on the book, or 14 million in space right now. Obviously it's early, but so 9.9 makes pretty much made all of that,
The two that next come up the most in the conversation, and I am of the opinion that neither one of them should be going anywhere, but I get that it's complicated. I guess we'll start with the more controversial of the two. That's Mark Andrews, and it's not because, to me, of what happened on Sunday, although for some people it will be. It's more a question of, well, you've got a young tight end that looks like a star in this league, and you have the opportunity to recoup a good bit of cap savings. My thought would be, this is where you go to work, and you hammer this out, and you find the number where you can get some of that cap flexibility, but you still keep Mark Andrews around. I acknowledge that even despite what happened, I would think there would be serious demand for Mark Andrews on an open market, and maybe his team is less inclined. What does your gut tell you about the Mark Andrews situation?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny because, roughly 48 hours ago, everybody was talking about him getting an extension.
Right.
And obviously after that game, my timeline on Twitter was populated with people saying all kinds of horrible things about him, which is kind of disappointing for Ravens fans. But
correct.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. But so, yeah, I mean, they always were going to have a tough decision here, because all three tight ends will be a free agent after next year. So something was going to have to happen this year. And it's, if you extend Andrews, then you probably are losing Likely. If you extend Likely, then you probably have to move on from Andrews. And then Charlie Kohler's stuck there at the back end. And, whether he'll want to come back, obviously a lot will depend on next year, but whether he wants to come back as second fiddle to whoever remains. But I think something's got to happen with one of them. And I don't think either Andrews or Likely is going to want to be second fiddle, because I think they both are number one tight ends. Or certainly Likely certainly looks like he can be.
So boy, we say that. Did they prove this year that they can both be productive enough within this offense? Again, acknowledging that I think a lot of us believe that wide receiver depth is still an area the Ravens need to upgrade, but they're both top 4 guys. Like, is it just that the money would be too good for Isaiah Likely somewhere else, and so that it's not even about ego? It's just about there's no way that you can possibly pay both of these guys moving forward.
I think that's the case. Yeah, because I think, Andrews, maybe his deal was 14 a year. Maybe they can get him for somewhere less than that a year, just because of his age, and I don't know if one game changes anything that much in the eyes of the NFL, leaving the fans out of the equation. But Likely's probably going to look. Obviously, if somebody wants to make him their Mark Andrews, the way the Ravens have had Andrews over the last 7 years, then Likely's probably looking at 15, 16 a year. I just don't see. Now, one of the big topics this offseason is going to be Lamar's contract as well, because next year his cap number is going to be $75 million, and they may need to restructure him this year. They haven't done it yet to create cap space. They've avoided that the last 2 years, but that'll put a cap number at 80 over the next 2 years, over 26 and 27. Obviously, that's not really sustainable. So that's if they can restructure Lamar and extend him, then maybe you can fit those 2 guys in. But I don't see that happening.
So then Marlon Humphrey. I just can't fathom that you can't figure that out. I don't feel like there's a similar scenario. Yes, I still think the Ravens need another outside cornerback, and I think we know it's not going to be Brandon Stevens. But I cannot fathom that Marlon Humphrey isn't a Baltimore Raven next year, and that those sides can't work that out in order to get that number and get the flexibility they need.
Yeah, I don't think that. I have no concerns about that. He has 2 years left on his contract. There's actually a void year. There's a third void year there. So even restructuring him would create about $11 million. It's just a straight restructure. If they added another void year, they could make that go up. His cap number next year is only going to be, only be $23 million. So even if they restructured him, that would take it up to 27, which isn't great. But that would be his 2026 number. I'm sorry, would go up to 27. And if you have to, you deal with it then. But certainly an extension would be, a way to spread this out a little more. Obviously, he's coming off of a great year, even though, a lot of people wanted him cut before this year. But obviously, he rebounded really well. He seems like a guy who's a Raven lifer. It seems like something he wants to. So I would have to think they can work that out, and that would certainly help create some cap space.
So let's then kind of put all this into picture, right? Can you give us an idea of what the differences would be in their cap space based on, assuming that they do something like what you just talked about with Marlon Humphrey, and then if they do with Mark Andrews, if they don't, if they do with Ronnie Stanley, if they don't, what is the overall cap space picture based on those kind of variables that they're dealing with at the moment?
Yeah, obviously there's big variables. Again, Lamar, if you restructure him, you get almost $16 million.
But can we talk about that for a second too? Because that feels like that would be the obvious thing to do, but I imagine that's more complicated because of the lack of a traditional agent.
Well, yes, and obviously it was not easy the last time. So that's kind of a scary proposition. If they restructure him, it puts even more pressure on them to bow down to him. Gives him that much more leverage.
But I guess what I would say, is there any reason not to?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, the money's going to be crazy, and one way or another. I mean, it's quarterback money. It's going to
Right.
be, and he went from the highest paid to I think he's like the fifth now or something like that, or maybe even lower in just basically 2 seasons, 2 off seasons. So, um, hopefully this time around they can make that work. Again, they've avoided restructuring him for these reasons because the 26 and 27 cap numbers right now are 75 million. So, but this year they may have to, if they can't get something done, I think he will be restructured and I hate to say it this way, they'll punt till next year, but that gives him so much leverage because an $80 million cap number gives him all the leverage in the world to ask for whatever he wants.
I hear you, man, but I also don't know, like, what. It's Lamar Jackson that you're getting in exchange.
Well, he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, if in 80, I'm trying to think. I mean, the highest cap number that's been at this point, I believe, was Deshaun Watson's at like the 46. I mean, they're always set to be high.
Right.
With
No,
quarterbacks, you just restructure and restructure. But yeah, I mean,
to your point, you're saying they have to do it. They're going to have to do it either this offseason or next offseason, one way or the other. The advantage would be to do it this offseason so that you're not negotiating against that $80 million number. It's just a question of how involved, how invested is the other side going to be, but presumably they do that. All right, so again, adding in all of those variables, where could their cap space be? Like on the top end, on the bottom end.
Sure. Well, right now they have 14. It takes about 16 million in cap space just for your in-season stuff.
Right.
You sign at the end of the year. So you got to have that. So they're already in theory in the hole. If they did nothing, they're already in theory in the hole to finish the season. Now that's obviously way down the road. So, I mean, I don't think they're going to be big spenders. I mean, I think if they get Stanley back, they get Ricard back, I'm not seeing them unless they do wholesale restructures we got to get this, this is the year we're going all in. I mean, they've never truly gone all in per se. I mean, they've certainly, not this past season, but the season before, obviously they paid a lot of money for Odell Beckham Jr., overpaid certainly. But that was what they felt they needed to do. So, I mean, they'll have a little to spend, but you're not going to see them go out and trade for, not that it's possible, but, trade for a top.
Yes, if everybody's still dreaming about Max Crosby, you're saying not happening.
Yeah, it's not happening. I mean, no, not that the Raiders are ever going to trade him anyway, but, or Garrett, they're not going to trade him, So, they might have, a middle range enough to get a middle range free agent. But, at this point now, again, if they go all in, I mean, if they just plain restructures, they can create 36 million just restructuring Lamar and Humphrey and Roquan if they really wanted to do that. And right there, then you're swimming in cap space. If and of course, if they traded or cut Andrews, that's 11 million. I don't think they'll cut him, but I think trade is more of a probability if they're going to move on. So I mean, if they go all in, I mean they could do it. And I guess if there's some big free agent out there, they could do it. But that's never been their way, so I'm not expecting that.
No.
But, if there is an urgency, they feel, that before Lamar's numbers get really big or before they have to deal with it, this is the year to go all in. Again, out of their character, but who knows?
No, your point is well taken. Like, this is you've been knocking on the door, banging on the door.
Yeah.
Like, if there was ever a time to reconsider, I think a lot of us were talking about at the trade deadline. Like, if there was ever a year to do something that you wouldn't have done in the past, this feels like it's the moment. But I get it. It would still be very unlike the Baltimore Ravens to assume that they'll do it. Is there anyone in there, you bring up those, is there anyone in there that we're not talking about that's still relevant with as far as guys that are on the roster whose situation could change?
Yeah, I mean, they don't have a lot of, other than Andrews, they don't really have a lot of guys that would be cut that could create a lot of
they couldn't move on from Justin Tucker, for example. It doesn't. It's not. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and not that they would, or
No.
obviously they made it clear they weren't going to, but until the wheels truly fall off the cart, and some might say that already happened, but obviously he seemed to rebound. So, Broderick Washington would be the only other guy. I think it's like 3 million in cap space saved. It's not a lot. His snaps went down this year. He actually was a healthy scratch, I think 2 or 3 games this year. But otherwise, there's not a whole lot of guys, like basically T and Andrews, that you could get any kind of real cap savings if that's what you're trying to find. And obviously, Marcus Williams was the other one, which was
Right.
going to happen one way or another. But that's pretty much resolved itself already.
I guess Kyle Van Noy's name looked, but like you can't move on from Kyle Van Noy.
No.
you don't have the
No.
luxury.
Derrick Henry, you're going to move
right?
on from him. There's plenty of cap savings to move on from Henry, but he's more likely. He might be a guy to add a year or two.
Right, just to try to get a little more. And maybe Van Noy would be in the same department?
I would think so. He's older, but obviously he's, it seems like they found the right way to play him, and getting after the quarterback. He was kind of used as a jack of all trade kind of guys, and looks like the Ravens found a way to found the right fit for him.
I guess as I look at the tape, Rashad Bateman, but my God, you're certainly not doing that.
Yeah,
that's not happening. So,
and then you're going to need to create cap space too, if you're going to re-sign Tyler Linderbaum
or Kyle Hamilton,
you're going to have to. Both he and oh my gosh, my brain is not working this morning.
I'm sorry. Say it again.
The safety.
Kyle Hamilton. Yes. Of course.
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah. Kyle Hamilton.
Brain's not working.
Well,
sorry.
and that to me was the other question. Is like, so as we were talking about free agents, Ardarius Washington stands out, but he's a restricted free agent. What does that look like as far as cost? Because I would assume you've got to be signing him.
Yeah, he since he's an undrafted free agent, you can't give him the low tender, because then there's no anybody could sign him. If you don't match, you just lose him. There's no draft pick compensation, so he will probably get the second round tender, because nobody will probably. I don't know. I can't say never say never, but I don't see anybody trying to put a contract on him at that point and give up a second round pick. So that's going to be about 5 million, 5.2, I believe.
Yeah.
So that one's set in stone. But if they can, another guy that if they could, get a long-term deal on, they could reduce that number a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, that's a move they've often made, especially at safety, whether it was Stone last year or 2 years ago, and then Chuck Clark a couple of years back prior to that.
Great stuff as always, Brian. Remind everybody what they can find when they wander over to Russell Street Report.
Sure. So that's where my articles are. There will be an article, I guess, in the next day or so. It's done, but we're still doing the postmortem on the season, obviously. So that will come out. That will list all the free agents, give a brief idea of salary cap, and also draft picks. Kind of just, it's more factual. It's not like opinionated at this point. And then right after the Super Bowl, that's when my big article comes out that will lay out all the cap implications of cuts and restructures and extensions and where they are and where they can get to.
At Raven Salary Cap, it is a resource that if you're not following, you're insane. Get on that immediately. Brian, we will be in touch as the offseason unfolds and trying to figure out what the impact is of everything. Always appreciate you doing this, my friend. Let's talk again real soon, all right?
Sounds good. Thanks a lot, Glenn.
Thanks, buddy.
Guys, have a great day.
You too. Brian McFarland, Russell Street Report, Raven Salary Cap, just an incredible resource for all of this. And, yeah, this is what it lays out. Like, the Ronnie Stanley thing is kind of front and center. It starts with Ronnie Stanley this offseason. And Mark Andrews. And I get the argument for you think Mark Andrews can be more of a luxury because of the presence of Isaiah Likely. I understand all of that. But we're viewing this through the lens of specificity of the tight end position instead of the broader lens of pass catcher. And at the end of the year, the Ravens, again, didn't have enough reliable pass catchers. So I'm not telling you you're wrong. I understand that. I don't think there's any world where he plays at the current cap number, but just moving on, you're back down to having 3 truly reliable pass catchers at that moment. Doesn't mean you can't draft one. Doesn't mean that you can't. I understand. But it's playing with fire. And you were, even with Zay Flowers getting hurt, you were extraordinarily lucky in the injury department this year. You are really playing with fire when you make that. So I get it. I understand what you all are saying, but I am not going to, even those of you that aren't overreacting to what happened on Sunday, even those of you that are just saying, hey, Sunday aside, this is just smart business. Commit to Isaiah Likely. He's your guy moving forward. I love Isaiah Likely. He is a star in this league. But I'm not ready. I'm not ready to say that. All right, let's continue talking some Ravens this morning. We've done this a few times this year, so I wanted to get his thoughts on how things came to an end. He is one of my favorites. Former Ravens wide receiver, all-around good guy, entertainment mogul, as Live Headphones are live. He is our guy, Mark Clayton, and he's with us this morning here on GCR. Mark, it's Glenn. It's always great to catch up, man. Thank you for taking the time for us this morning.
Most definitely, Glenn, man. Good to hear your voice.
Hey, I want to give this to you, right, because I feel like you're the perfect person to ask this question to. And I say this because, for everybody that doesn't know, Mark Clayton was the most popular man for all of us to talk to in the locker room when he was a Baltimore Raven. Mark would actually we just go hang out for the most part. Like, we just wander over.
Right.
We weren't even getting any. We were just hanging out. That was the way that it worked. There has been criticism directed to Mark Andrews for the fact that he didn't speak to reporters after the game on Sunday or again yesterday when the Ravens cleaned out their lockers. And as you would understand from me, it's a complicated conversation because given what we do for a living, we would like to hear from Mark Andrews. At the same time, I try to recognize that mental health is a real thing and that I can be empathetic and I can understand the difficulty of this. I don't know what the right thing to say is here. Like, it's easy to say you feel like Mark Andrews maybe a day later should be ready to speak and to talk, but it's a tough thing. As a player, what say you? And as someone who, no matter what was going on, the good, the bad, the all of it, you were always right there to talk to us. What's your thought here?
Man, first of all, I mean, he hasn't responded to me either, so just so you know,
and that's your guy, and that's your fellow Oklahoma brother.
Exactly. And, at the end of the day, people deal differently, and you can't, put on somebody how you would deal with it. Because, the fact of the matter, you don't know how you would deal with it. And then some people do deal with it like I would deal with it. And I'm going to step up and talk about it in that moment, in the pain, when it sucks the most. But not everybody is built like that. Not everybody does that. And that's okay, He'll address it. He's addressing it personally with himself. That's a hard fact to kind of sleep with for now, and I'm sure he's going to feel it for as we can see. But I know he'll get over it. It's just his time, and it's his timing.
To your point, he's not the first player to ever fumble a football or drop a football. Like, it's
right.
This happens. It is unfortunately part of the game. You're sick about it here because Mark Andrews is a franchise player. Mark Andrews is a Ring of Honor Raven. He is going to go down as that caliber of player. To me, it sickens me that this becomes a part of his story.
Oh, my God. Me too, man. And it just, as a brother, a Sooner, and to me, was arguably the best pass catcher that's wore the black, purple, and gold. And, it is hard. It was so hard. I couldn't believe it.
Right, right.
It was almost, when I dropped a fourth down versus New England, I remember it, and it was I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that happened. that doesn't happen. But I felt for him in that moment, and the team, after that, because we had everything we needed to get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. Our the careless errors, I would say, from Lamar, and then Mark's were massive, and they are what they are. And here we are into off season, and however you do it, you got to wipe the slate clean. And today it ain't gonna be the day, but at some point the slate has to be wiped clean, and we start over again.
You referenced that you were there, for unfortunately some dreadful playoff losses for the Ravens, right? Like,
Yeah,
we try to block out 06 entirely and just pretend like it never
Oh, my.
existed in Baltimore. And again, like, as much as we didn't expect that to be coming in 08, you guys are right there, right? Like, you're right there. Only to have it. What is that like? Like, how and I know that unfortunately you weren't able to be there when they finally did get over the hump in 2012. But like, how do you move on and block? Like, it just has to feel like this weight is overwhelming for these guys at this point.
Yeah, it is weighty. It is so weighty because, like I was told early, NFL is different. It's a long season, man. It is, and it's emotional. It's stressful. It's fun. It's awesome. Like, it's all of the things emotionally. And so, to have such a huge letdown when you're right there, and it's at your fingertips, you can feel we got the momentum, and we're gonna go down, we're gonna score. Lamar, we're gonna do something, and when we score, we're going to get the 2. Like, it's all of that, and then it's like your gut gets ripped out of you. And you have to find a way to move on, because life goes on, seasons come and go, with the good and the bad, and everybody does that differently. But it's partly it's business, partly it's, hey, look forward to next season, partly it's what we learn. You learn, less. It's a number of different things that different guys will go through kind of mentally to get themselves prepared for next season. But these next month, 2, maybe, I mean, I don't know, for some it may last till March. Some it may be the what fuels you all the way through next year to go to the Super Bowl, which would hopefully light a fire when it comes to being more protective of the ball in that sense. But we'll see. We'll see how.
Mark, I know you're a busy man because you are a business man. I understand that. We got to get to that. But like what you just said, that was the conversation that we were having yesterday. Is the lesson that you learned from this game, particularly watching how the Chiefs have evolved from most exciting team in the history of football to incredibly boring, like perfectly happy to be boring. And the Bills were perfectly content to be boring on Sunday night. Is the lesson from this that for as exciting as Lamar Jackson is, that the Ravens have to learn, particularly in the postseason, that it's okay to just be boring, and that you don't have to make the biggest play. You just have to make the functional play in these moments.
Man, I that is a great lesson. I think, for us, we've been on the hype train, and it's good. And I mean, that magic is what put us in position to win the game despite the turnovers, or, to at least get it into overtime. Despite the turnovers. And, in my mind, it's a combination because, you still see some Mahomes magic. The touchdown he threw to Kelsey while being tackled.
No, that was incredible.
Incredible. Like, and then Josh, same thing. Like, you have to have it. But then there's also like this really high awareness for protecting the ball. I don't care. Like, there's magic, and then there's like, not now. Like, I can't do it.
Right.
Sadly, ours came down to a function, catching. We needed to catch the ball, and I would call that play, 100 times out of 100, and I know Mark's going to catch 99 of them clearly, and it sucks that it was that, and so I can't, there is boring, and we can be boring at times, play defense, run the ball, and we have that in us to win championships. This just unfortunately came down to a point where we didn't physically do what needed to be done to win the game.
Let me just run this last one by you. This is not my take, but it is the take of some. And there would be a parallel to the change that was once made from Brian Billick to John Harbaugh, and the argument that some would say that, look, when you just come up short this many times, maybe sometimes you just need a new voice. What do you make of that argument?
I disagree. Based on what I'm looking at, I think a new voice doesn't change necessarily like the play on the field. The game is in between the lines, and I think voices and coaches essentially put players in position to do what they do best. And then when the lights are on and the ball is snapped, everything that happens in that 3 to 6 or 7 seconds is on the player. Like, it's on the player.
Yep.
And so if consistently, a player is not performing, all right. And it's, we know, when there's friction in the locker room, or man, this coach is not a good fit with this group. These guys do not respect you. Like, when there's like, okay, there needs to be a change up top, because what's getting put out there is certainly not the best. And so I don't think we're there. We are a smidgen off, and it is execution, to be honest. And so, no, I disagree with the change in leadership.
That's how I feel as well. I think it's almost the exact opposite. Like, I think that that's part of the reason they were able to turn things around in season is because
Agree.
It feels like they're together.
Great
All right,
point.
I know this
Great
is a
point.
big moment for you and for the company.
Yeah.
What do we need to know right now about Liv?
Man, we're moving, man. I actually going to hop off of here and get on. I have Forbes and Financial Times coming up.
Listen to you.
But we have headphones in the building, and we're starting to disperse them. And so everybody will start seeing Liv headphones all over the place, man. And I'm excited to make some people happy with some really dope headphones.
LiveAudio.com with 2 V's. Mark, love you, brother. Always appreciate it. Let's talk soon, all right?
All right, later.
It's Mark Clayton. He really is. He's a mogul now, man. He's going to talk to Financial Times. Glenn, appreciate you and all, but I got to hop on a call with the Financial Times. Okay. Like, all right, I understand that, and appreciate him taking the time for us. I haven't spent a lot of time on the Mark Andrews thing. Guys, I don't think that it's as black and white as some of you want it to be. You would love for Mark Andrews, hey, if you weren't ready on Sunday night, then by Monday, like, let's sit down and let's talk. But we are too deep with the reality, and especially to me, in the shadow of what we've learned about the death of Brian Mattis, for example. We can't try to make this binary. You have to do this. You have to do that. Yeah. I understand that for like what I do for a living, for the health of the NFL, you want the players to talk. But we got to be willing to discuss it. There's some red in this picture too. It's not all black and white. And mental health is real, and what guys are going through is real. And so I don't have a correct answer. I'll get to some of yours later on. We're going to talk to Patrick Stevens when we come back in. But later, before we get out of here today, I'll spend a little bit more time because I've gotten some messages about it that I want to respond to. Patrick Stevens will join us next. We'll talk some Terps, some college hoops here on GCR.
Treat yourself and taste the Baltimore tradition that is the legendary Costas Inn. Hey, it's Stan the Fan Charles. For over 50 years, the Costas Inn has been a Baltimore original, dishing out their amazingly scrumptious, fat, award-winning crab cakes and steamed crabs. Every season is crab season at Costas, so make your plans now by calling 410-477-1975 and reserve your taste of heaven. Sit back, crack some crabs, and watch the Ravens chase down another title on Costas' 15 TVs. On Monday nights, Costas offers their half-pound jumbo lump crab cake with 2 sides for under $30, and there are nightly specials Monday through Friday. So head on down to the Costas Inn at 4100 North Point Boulevard or visit them at CostasInn.com.
Make the most out of every day in your Toyota RAV4. Available in hybrid or gas-only models. A RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today.
The votes were all counted, and the results are official. Royal Farms was named #1 for food in the USA Today 10 Best poll, receiving more votes than any other convenience store chain in America. The next time you want to get some good food fast, doesn't it make sense to go to Royal Farms? Voted best in the USA and home of world-famous chicken. Real fresh, real fast, Royal Farms.
The latest edition of Press Box is available now, and it's our very special Best of 2024 issue. On the cover, we celebrate our Mo Gabba Sports Person of the Year, Lamar Jackson, as Bo Smolka profiles what the quarterback means to the community beyond the football field. Also inside, we celebrate the top people, performances, and moments of the year in local sports. Press Box is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores, and you can always read the entire issue and find the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
Need a trophy or award that's as unique as the achievement? Look no further than Crown Trophy. With locations in Owings Mills and Gaithersburg, they specialize in custom trophies, plaques, and medals for any occasion. From sports and academic awards to employee recognition and corporate gifts, visit crowntrophy.com today and let them help you create a lasting memory for your school, team, or business. Crown Trophy is a proud supporter of the Maryland Public Secondary Schools Athletic Association. crowntrophy.com.
One of the things that's definitely wrong with this country is that this dude still has a job somehow, some way. Glenn Clark.
You guys are going to have to bear with me for a minute because as we were talking about other topics, I didn't look down at my phone in the last segment, and I didn't see until we went to break, and I finally looked at my phone. Just some awful news that we got this morning, and that's that our friend and the extraordinary play-by-play voice of Navy Athletics, Pete Medhurst, has passed away. And we've been talking about Pete for months as he's been dealing with a battle with brain cancer. And I'm going to bring Patrick Stevens in here this morning, and we might not do exactly what we typically do because Patrick also knows Pete really well. Patrick, I'm sorry. I apologize. This is not the moment that I wanted to have, but I appreciate you being here this morning. Thanks for hopping on, pal.
Yeah. Awful to hear this.
You and I talked when we first found out what Pete was going through, and it's one thing for somebody to be good at their job, right? Like, and Pete unquestionably was extraordinarily good at it, not just this job, but all of his jobs.
His many jobs.
Yes. But there was something more about Pete, the human being, the joy that he got from doing all of these jobs. It is so difficult for me to explain to people. You and I have talked about it. Pete would call me and ask me if I could let him do some Division III ice hockey games. He did network games for Big Ten Net where, like, he did not need to do any. He loved doing this. He loved telling these athletes stories. He loved sports that other people wouldn't necessarily pay attention to. And my God, did he love being the voice of the Naval Academy.
He really loved being the voice of the Naval Academy. I think that and just think about it. I mean, this is a Southern Anne Arundel County guy, right? Like, I mean, like that is about that and Rosecroft were like the two things that he wanted more than anything else, right? Like, at least it seemed that way. But like you said, like he would pop up doing other stuff. There's a cable channel. It's like called Next Level Sports or something.
He and I work together regularly there.
Okay, and they have there's a spring lacrosse league for like club schools from HBCUs.
NCL.
And he's sitting in the Nats Park press box telling me about, this team had a guy he absolutely could have been playing at a for a really good D3 team, or like these guys, they maybe they haven't, these guys just picked up the sport, but you can see that and he's really genuinely excited about it. He called, he's called these games months earlier. It's funny over Christmas break. I don't flip channels very often, but I was flipping around, and sure enough, I come across one of those
NCL
spring
game.
lacrosse games, and getting to hear him and call a game like that, it brought a smile to my face, knowing just how genuinely excited he was to be able to do that, regardless of what it was, whether it was filling in on an Nats broadcast or doing an Army-Navy football game or whatever, right? Doing a BTN game, you name it. Somebody that had a real joy for doing those sorts of things.
He whenever he would talk to a young broadcaster, he would talk so glowingly about the time that he spent on the Eastern Shore early on in his career. He loved telling people about doing Salisbury games. He loved it wasn't a burden or paying his dues. He loved it. He loved that time at what it meant to him in his life, and would encourage young broadcasters, go to a small market. Like
he told me a story about a Salisbury Hobart game. He told me this story multiple times about a Salisbury Hobart game from like the early 90s. And the reason the context he brought it up in was, besides the fact that it was played in a bunch of mud and was like two really good teams, was that Jeff Tambroni, the coach of Penn State, was a player for Hobart at that time. And so, like, he brought it up as well. I was doing the weekly interview or whatever, the prep interview with Tambroni, and we brought up this mud game or whatever it was. And it's 30 years later, and he's still super excited about it. So I want to kind of bring something else up to kind of steer this a little bit, because I know this is really hard for both of us. Yeah. But, I think one of the things that also came through, whether it was on air or off air, remember, this is a guy that refereed basketball games and umpired games and all that. And so his critique of the officiating in so many things stood out. I can't tell you the number of times I got a text or a DM, before a Saturday Patriot League basketball game, and I'd be somewhere else. I mean, just as kind of background, like, Saturdays in a low major league, you're not getting referees that people have generally heard of.
Yeah.
Like,
sure.
it's just
sure.
There's
right.
all those games.
There's so many games going on, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so all the higher leagues are going to get priority. And so he would message me and he'd go, "Who's this guy? And how many Division I games has he worked? I've never seen this guy before." And I'd go on to KenPom and I'd look up the guy's history or whatever, and I'd pass along, "Oh, well, this is the first Patriot League game he's ever worked. He's worked, or this guy, he's actually worked 25 games, but in Division I this year, but most of them have been in like the Big South or the Ohio Valley or something like that." And so, there was even that sort of stuff where it's just kind of adding that information. I always felt bad if I didn't actually see the message until they were, well into their broadcast or whatever. So, that was and I would hear critiques later. It's like, "Oh, that guy, he had a really firm control of the game," or, "Ooh, that guy didn't have a very strong day at all."
Patrick, it's so funny you bring that up. I've told Pete on a number of occasions, one of the ways that he most impacted me as a broadcaster was, you're not guessing. Don't guess what the call is. They're going to tell you what the call is. Like, what the call is. You got to be able to watch the game and understand exactly what happened here. And I'll acknowledge I was never on his level in lacrosse, right? Like, there are still times where something happens and I can't pick it up on a broadcast. But Pete knew all of it immediately. Immediately knew what the call was every time. There was never a guess, man. And I was enamored. And he would also do these videos where he would it was some of the best content I thought he ever did. Was he did these videos where, after he had a little bit more time when he wasn't doing the daily radio show, he just started like going through college basketball games the night before and big calls that were made at the end, and would like bring out the whiteboard and explain it all to you. Like, here's the call, here's what they got. And it was incredible. He was nailing it every time. And I just learned so damn much from Pete Medhurst because of it. Like, I learned a ton, and the passion that he had, like, and the Navy part of it stands out. Like, he would text me when he found out I had another guest on my show talking about Navy football. Like, if he found out that I had Randy Cross on my show, he would text me and say, "Thanks for doing that." Like that's how much he cared. He cared so deeply about it. I don't have the words for how gutting it is for all of us. Like, for all of us that know him, it's gutting. But I think it's deeper than that for two markets. And there are like Johnny Holiday is beloved, there's very few people who transcend both of these markets. And Pete Medhurst transcended both of these markets, and all of us in both, like, just as good as it got, man.
And I think I would be remiss if I didn't now point out that, like, first off, like, just thoughts out to his wife and he has a daughter in what, junior or senior in high school. I can't remember which of the two. It's just that's the stuff that really gets me. Like, what a challenging thing to have to go through. We all learn, unfortunately, that life is deeply, deeply unfair, but sometimes it can be more deeply unfair than others. And that is something that really, over the last several months, I've thought about a lot. Just how incredibly difficult it has to be, not just to lose your spouse, but if you're in high school and you lose a parent, just how unbelievably hard that is. And I hope that, I just wish them so much good at this point, because that's what really, really gets me. I mean, listen, I know, people like you and I will miss all these interactions that we've been talking about, but there's so much more there for that family. And I just, you just kind of wish you could wrap them up in a big hug at this point. Not that it would do all that much good, but it would be, something's better than nothing, right?
And I'm going to add Joe Miller to that list too, who, of course, was a broadcast partner at Navy, but for those that don't know, his literal best friend, like best friend. It is really cool that they've been able to share that literal best friend and partner. And oh man, I'm sorry, buddy. I'm as I'm sure you are, I'm shaking, man. Like, I'm just shaking at this moment. Patrick, it feels trite to kind of talk about anything else, but
do you really want to?
I don't really want to, if I'm being completely honest with you. I don't.
Then let's not bother with it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. There will be lots of basketball to discuss next week, and we'll do that then. I love you, man, and I thank you for spending a couple of minutes with us, and let's talk again next Tuesday. All right.
Awesome, Glenn. You take care.
I've told you guys. There have been other people that have been impactful in my life, in my career, in my journey. I just referenced Johnny Holiday a second ago, and Johnny Holiday is very high on that list. When I was 23, Johnny met me for the first time, and he gave me his phone number, and he said, "You call me anytime. You need a guest. You just want to talk. You just need some advice. Call me." And he meant it. And this is the reason that our Twitter header photo is still a picture of Johnny sitting in studio with me one day. He's never wavered. I've known him for 20 years. I didn't know Pete. I told you guys this when we first got this news. I didn't know Pete personally. I really like Pete. You guys know I really like Navy football in particular. Like, I really enjoy the program, what it stands for, what it means. My grandfather was a Navy pilot, so I've always had this like affinity for Navy. Even when I was a child, and Navy football was awful. And I like listening to Navy games when I'd be driving around. I enjoyed. I thought Pete was extraordinarily good after he replaced Bob Sochi, and Pete had been on the broadcast before that. And in 2014, when the radio station went under, the first job that I took was with Loyola, and then the second job that I took was at 106.7 and 99.1 in D.C. And I wasn't going to host, although I did end up doing some hosting. It was just going to be doing updates. I didn't know D.C. sports well enough that I thought I could be a host. But my friend Chris Kynard was kind enough that he was willing to give me that. And I was really excited about meeting Pete Medhurst, who did updates in the mornings with the Sports Junkies. I really was. It was genuine. I was genuinely excited about meeting Pete Medhurst. And then ironically, the first time I met him, I didn't know this. He was wandering down the hall in the middle of trying to call a DC United game that he was doing from the studio. Now, I didn't know that. I just saw Pete Medhurst walking down the hall, and I was so excited. Like, hey, man, Pete Medhurst, Glenn Clark. I'm the guy from And he just kind of blew right past me. Oh, okay. And I was like, oh, is this guy an a-hole? Like, do I? That wasn't the case at all. He had to get into the studio to call this soccer game. After the game ends, he comes into the update studio, and he just starts talking with me like we were old friends, asking me questions about Baltimore, people I know, the experience from the ill-fated radio station. We just start talking. And I'm telling him what I'm doing, and maybe I had done a Loyola Navy soccer game. And he was like, wait, that was you? Oh, everybody's telling me that you were great. Now, I had done soccer for all of like 5 minutes at that point, and I can tell you I was not great. I was not. And I don't know what the barometer was. Maybe there was somebody before me that was really bad, and so like in comparison, I was at least competent. I don't know. And then we just kept talking. Every time I would be there and he was there, we would just have conversations. Like, that was just all it was. We would just chat. He would ask me what I was thinking about doing. Like, we would just have these lengthy chats. And then I definitely remember I did a Navy Loyola lacrosse game, and he pulled me aside and was like, dude, you're really good. Smacked me in the face. So that fall, Pete and Joe Miller were, like, Joe, they both do the Navy broadcasts. And Pete was also the lead play-by-play voice for DC United. And, when they would go on the road with Navy football, that took priority. Navy was the priority. And so he said, hey, I have all these DC United dates that are on the weekends in the fall, and we're not available, so I want you to call them. And I legitimately said, I don't think I'm qualified. Like, I had done soccer for a year at that point. And Pete wasn't hearing it. Like, he wasn't. Said, nope. You can do this. And that, like, did more for me confidence-wise. Like, I knew I was a broadcaster. I knew I could do radio. But I still didn't really know if you still live through, like, the fear of being caught as a fraud in some areas. And, like, I felt that as a play-by-play guy. Like, I'm not really a play-by-play guy. I'm a talk show host masquerading as a play-by-play guy. And that was the most powerful feeling that I ever had, was Pete Medhurst saying, no, not only can you do this, but I trust you to the point where I'm going to let you do a major league sports team. I'm making that call. Personally, Pete Medhurst decided that. People that were paying a lot of money, too. Like, that, that's, like, he put his neck out. I had so many conversations with Pete Medhurst. Not just when we would work together. We ended up working together a lot. Like, the times at CBS when I was still down there. And then over the years, I just mentioned to Patrick that we worked together with this NLSE network, Next Level Sports. We'd work together regularly, whether it was doing the HBCU Lacrosse League, the NCL, or doing high school games somewhere. Just last season, we did all the St. Francis games. He would come over and do Stevenson games just because I asked. I loved it. Man, one time we host the Mustang Classic at Stevenson every year, which is this big Division III lacrosse tournament. And most of the games are solo broadcasts. And Pete was there doing a game, and he finished his game, and I was getting ready to do the next game. And he just looked at me. He's like, "You want a partner?" And he hadn't studied these teams. He hadn't, but that's Pete. Pete didn't need it. Pete was so good. You just hand him a roster. He was just going to break down. Like, he knew the games. He was so good at that. It was hilarious how he was the best play-by-play guy, and he was also a damn good color analyst. Which then, because there were times where I'd be asked to be a color analyst for something, and I'd be like, I'm barely a play-by-play guy. I'm definitely not a color analyst. But then Pete doing it and learning from him made me say, okay, I can learn how to be a color analyst. I'm not going to be, Troy Aikman, but like I can do that. We would talk about our families a lot. We'd talk about the business a lot. We'd spend just time on the phone together. He would start doing, he did a ton of appearances with us. We had a deal for a little while where he had to do like one show a month, where he would do at least an hour with us. Just talking. He had so many ideas. He would call me. He'd just be like, "I got an idea for a TV show we're going to do together." Like, okay, all right, Pete. Like, he had so many visions. Once we started working with NLSE, like, he had so many visions. He was like, we're going to do kind of like the Peyton Manning thing, but for relevant local stories. We're going to go to the gyms where, like, high school basketballers and this basketball players from this area played, and we're going to tell the stories of people watching Carmelo Anthony and, talk to his teammates, and we're going to make that a TV show. Like, and it was a great idea, right? I'm like, yeah, that's a really good idea, Pete. Let's do it. Like, we had all these, boy, did he understand how this business should work and why often it wasn't working. And when I say Pete loved being the play-by-play voice at Navy, like, he loved. He would often say publicly, "I have the best job in America," by being the play-by-play voice of Navy football, Navy athletics. And he meant that. He wasn't just saying that where people could hear it. Like, he wasn't just saying that on Twitter or when a microphone was open. It would be the first thing he would say to you. There were a couple of, I don't want to give information away. There were a couple of times in recent years where Pete knew there were maybe some bigger opportunities that would exist. And I would talk to him about it. And one of the first things he would say is, "But I have to make sure that it would work, that I could still do Navy." Like, there were some NFL opportunities that might have existed, that might have been in play. And I don't want to speak out of turn. I don't want to say, but I can say that broadly. Broadly, there were NFL positions that he was more than qualified for, and that he had spoken. That he was in the conversation, I guess is the best way to say it. And he would say that every time. He's like, "Yeah, I'd like that job. I'd love that job, but only if they'd be okay with me doing Navy." And these weren't necessarily local jobs. These would be like, if they let me fly in on Sunday after I do Navy on Saturday, then yeah. But I want to do Navy. Like, Navy's that he loved being the play-by-play guy at Navy. He was so good to young broadcasters. I say it, like, I would listen to him counsel. There's so many things, and I joked about it with him all the time. I always learned something from Pete whenever I worked with him. There was always something new. He, without you asking, would offer you advice if you were a young broadcaster. If you were young in your career, he would, like, again, working somewhere, he might have this 23-year-old kid that he's working with, or that he heard do a game before he did a game. And they'd finish up and he'd be like, "Hey, man, let me tell you what I thought you did really well. And here's a couple of things areas where you could improve. And let me make you a couple suggestions." He would start, so where'd you go to school? Where have you been working? What happened? He would talk all the time. He would tell everyone that would listen. You're in D.C., you're in Baltimore, you're 22 years old. You feel like, that's what I got to do. No. Go find a small market job. Go establish yourself somewhere like Western Maryland, Hagerstown, somewhere like that. Go establish yourself in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. For him, the Eastern Shore. Go prove that you can do this. Then you're going to have a reel that's going to show everybody else that you can do it, that you're not some small market broadcaster, because you worked through all of that. All the stuff that you needed to work through when you were young, you're going to do that there. And he would tell it constantly. And he was so romantic about the time that he spent on the Eastern Shore. Would talk about it eternally. He at one point lived with a host family. Like, he was a minor league baseball player. He was romantic about it, loved it. And had the same, again, it's ironic. He was from Anne Arundel County, as Patrick brought up, and like, so he kind of was right in between these two markets. And at Pete's age, like, there were no Nationals when he was a kid, so like everything was Orioles. But then Capitals, Redskins, like, he was sort of in between these two markets and soaked it all in. And so, like, few people were ever as capable as he was to discuss both. He could do a radio show in D.C. one day and a radio show in Baltimore the next day and be perfectly capable of talking about all of it. I was joking with a friend of mine recently that, like, one time, apparently WBAL asked him to fill in on the afternoon show. And he was like, "Are you doing sports in the afternoon? Like, I thought you did a political show." They're like, "Just come in and talk about what you want to talk about. Just do a 4-hour show." And at one point, he started talking about his life and his daughter playing softball and how much he loves softball and how softball is going to be the next sport that, you're seeing the impact that Caitlin Clark is having on basketball at this moment. And you watch, there's going to be one transcendent softball star, and it's going to change everything. And softball is going to be the sport that everybody realizes is phenomenal. And it's going to blow up. And it's going to have a basketball-like rise. And that it was compelling, as I was told. I wish I could have heard it. Like, he was moving people to call in to talk about softball. Because he had such passion for it, because he cared about it that much. He was a friend to all of us. He would tell you who he didn't like. He had no problem doing that. But even some of the people he didn't like, he was still a friend to. But he was a friend to all of us. He was aware of everything that we were doing. He would talk to me about things that not only I done on this show, he would talk to me about things that Rita and I were doing on the radio show. He was in tune. He was listening. He was... It just caught me that I'm talking about Pete Medhurst in past tense, and that really, I'm sorry. I'm going through it right now. I have to apologize to everybody. It's so rare to find someone that is as good at what they do as they are a person. And God, Pete Medhurst is the that's Pete Medhurst. Brian just shared with me a tweet that his partner Joe Miller sent. Dear Pete Medhurst, I'll remember all the laughs, the road trips, and so many of those conversations. You were an endless cheerleader for me, and I can't imagine how different this journey would have been without your help and guidance. Rest in peace. We'll all miss you. Everyone who worked with Pete is going to share the exact same sentiments. All of us. I broke down. We were doing the St. Francis IMG game, and I just started talking about Pete in the middle of it, and I broke down. A truly special human, and someone that we were fortunate was in this orbit, was in this place, this time, this location. I don't know. I'm sorry. What Patrick said, I can't fathom. I've tried talking to his wife a few times, and I just can't fathom. We all deal with grief, and we've talked a lot about grief. My family's gone through, but yeah, you got a teenage daughter. Pete knows how much I love him. I called him the franchise all the time. I called him the franchise. Not to his face. I wouldn't do it to his face. I would do it whenever I referred to Pete. I'd say, coming up next, the franchise, Pete Medhurst. Because he was a franchise player. He was, everywhere he went, he was invaluable. He could call any sport. Any sport. Scott Strassmeyer, the SID at Navy, would tell me he was the best volleyball play-by-play person in the country. He desperately wanted more softball gigs. He called Major League Baseball games. He called Army-Navy games. He called, Big Ten lacrosse, the Big Ten Network. But he could do water polo, swimming, wrestling, all of it. There wasn't a sport that Pete Medhurst couldn't go. Harness racing. Exceptional. And let me tell you, I called a horse race once. I would never even attempt to do it again. He was outstanding and loved it. Loved, as Patrick pointed out, loved working at Rosecroft. Loved it. I had a passion for it. Would do content about it that had nothing to do with what they were paying him to do. He would end his workday and then film a video talking about the night at Rosecroft. God, he was so excited when he would get to do Preakness broadcasts for WBAL. He was so excited about it. I'm going to go be in the infield at Preakness, doing a He's not calling the race. He was just there, talking. but he loved it. He was so excited to do it. Like things that some of the rest of us would be like, I got to go over there and do that. He was thrilled that he had the opportunity to do it. And should have been doing bigger and better things. To take nothing away from what he did. I don't want to disparage it. He should have been a network broadcaster. That's how talented Pete Medhurst was. All right. Pete, I love you. Be thinking about Pete's family. The GoFundMe, and we talked about it a lot. His family still has a lot of needs, and unfortunately, that's only going to grow now with Pete Medhurst being gone. I would ask, we'll find it again, and we'll share it again on our Twitter account. I would ask that you try to seek it out, and you try to find it. Just search Pete Medhurst GoFundMe, and you'll come across it. And his family still needs our help, and probably needs our help even more so. It's just a crushing day. It's devastating. We'll pause. We'll come back in. We'll talk about some other things. I'm supposed to be a professional. This is the difficult part. Like, it's where human. This is why, by the way, I said what I said about Mark Andrews. Like, my job would be to talk about basketball with Patrick Stevens, but I just don't have it in me today. So it's why I can be empathetic, and why I don't think it's black and white, and why I don't think that it's just that simple. But we'll talk about that more next. I love you, Pete. It's Glenn Clark Radio.
COVID-19 and flu viruses are circulating in Maryland. But don't worry. Protection is within arm's reach. Protect your health with this year's COVID-19 and flu shots. It's safe and convenient to get them both at the same time. Flex your protection. For more information, visit health.maryland.gov/vaccines.
This message paid for by the Maryland Department of Health.
Whether your focus is luxury and comfort, convenience and technologically advanced connectivity, or sporty performance and aggressive styling, we've got the perfect Highlander for you. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Highlanders from your local Toyota dealer today.
The ultimate fan experience awaits you at Sports and Social Maryland. See how we're raising the sports bar with our massive 100-foot media wall featuring 40 HD TVs and a 47-foot big screen. Bet on your favorite teams and this year's biggest events at the FanDuel Sportsbook while enjoying your favorite beers and cocktails, plus our delicious takes on bar food classics. Visit Sports and Social at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland at Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
Driving in Maryland? Did you know an Easy Pass from DriveEasyMD.com can save you time and money? Of course you did, because you are a thrifty driver. An antenna reads your Easy Pass transponder and automatically deducts the toll from your Easy Pass account. There, you just saved money with Easy Pass, all without slowing or receiving a notice in the mail. Well done, thrifty driver, well done. Get your Easy Pass at DriveEasyMD.com.
The votes were all counted, and the results are official. Royal Farms was named #1 for food in the USA Today 10 Best poll, receiving more votes than any other convenience store chain in America. The next time you want to get some good food fast, doesn't it make sense to go to Royal Farms? Voted best in the USA and home of world-famous chicken. Real fresh, real fast, Royal Farms.
Contrary to what some people believe, I actually like this guy when he sleeps. Glenn Clark, talking sports.
All right, back in here on GCR. It is a Tuesday edition of the program. And I'm going to do my best. We'll just kind of get through today, and then we'll have normal shows the rest of the week, and it's just what it is. Pete's a figure that goes beyond just the reason I'm struggling is because of my relationship with Pete. But there are a lot of people that enjoyed Pete's work, and I know that maybe somebody, I don't know. Let me stop for a second. Look straight in the camera. Let's just do a show. One thing that Pete loved was high school sports. He really did. He would happily work high school sports broadcasts. Like do the Nationals one day and do a high school football game the next. Of course, you can always find out the latest that's going on in the world of high school sports by visiting countysports.zone. Countysports.zone, proudly sponsored by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. Scores, schedules, updates, rankings, news, all of it. Find it at countysports.zone. Again, proudly sponsored by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. I basically told you what I have to say about Mark Andrews. To try to reiterate it in one place. When you want to make it binary, you're missing it. You're missing it. Mental health is real. Living in the era of suck it up, buttercup. For some people, we talked to Mark Clayton earlier. Mark Clayton was the type of person that it wasn't going to affect his mental health to walk out and address the fact that he dropped a football. It didn't impact him the same way. Does that make him better? At a time, that's what we thought. We thought that. We would say those things. We would say, you're better than somebody else because of your ability to do that. I would hope that we have evolved to understand that what people go through, it's real. Naomi Osaka dealt with this very publicly. We just talk about how if you're going to find me, find me. I can't go do press conferences. I don't have it in me. So if you want to find me, find me. It's more complicated for the health of the sport. It's more complicated for the NFL because hearing from the players is part of the entertainment. It's part of that. It wouldn't be good for the NFL for their players to all decide or all say, for mental health reasons, none of us can talk to reporters. None of us can go in front of cameras. I don't know how to quantify that. I can't tell you the dollar value, but that would hurt the league. I'm not going to suggest that that's the reason why people watch football. Again, we got to live in reality. People would still watch the games, but it would hurt the business. We play clips ad nauseum throughout the course of the week on all of these network shows and everything that we do. I mean, not here. They don't want to lose that. So it's a fine line. They don't want players to say, for mental health reasons, I'm not going to talk to the media. That would be bad. Again, not somebody today, some doofus will say, it's the death of the league. No. But they don't want that. Based on what I do for a living, based on what a lot of us do for a living, it's easy to say something like, well, Mark Andrews should be out there. Because you think about yourself first in that conversation. Like, it's for our business, for the health of what we do, we need to talk to Mark Andrews. There is a broader conversation that players are dealing with where they say, well, why are we talking to you? Instead, we could just do a podcast. We could just flip our phone on and go on Instagram and then we'll get that. We get the interactions. We can sell that. Why are we helping you make money? Somebody would say, hey, there still needs to be the presence of a fourth estate. It's like somebody needs to ask the questions, but this isn't the government that we're talking about. It's a complicated conversation. It is. It's an incredibly complicated conversation that we try to narrow down to, you should do this. Yes, I would like for Mark Andrews to go speak. I would have liked for him to speak on Sunday night. But I also recognize that people deal with real issues. And I don't know enough about Mark Andrews. You would think, like most people would probably say Mark Andrews has a pretty good life, right? Like he's highly compensated to play a sport. He's largely been extraordinarily good at it. He's popular. People own his jersey. He's a good-looking guy. He's inspired a lot of human beings with his fight against diabetes. He, helped save a woman on a plane last year. Like it would be easy to say, like, Mark Andrews, and maybe some of that makes it worse when you go through some of this. Like, you're so used to things going well that when something doesn't, it leaves you in a place. I don't know. I can't get into Mark Andrews' head. But because of that, I'm not going to try to. I'm not going to try to force the issue. I wish Mark Andrews would have spoke just so that so people couldn't keep piling on him, right? Like that's the part of me that, like, I wish that by yesterday he would have gotten to a place where he said, hey guys, sorry, I couldn't do this last night, but I know y'all have questions, and I've had 24 hours, 14 hours, whatever it would have been. And maybe if it had been 24 hours, maybe if it was today that they were doing locker cleanout, he would be in a place where he's like, all right, I've gone through it all. Let's talk about it. Or maybe not. Maybe he's not going to, like our friend Arthur Millette talked about how for like 5 days after they lost to the Chiefs. And nobody even really blames him. Like, he brings up the one completion at the end of the game was over him. And he dealt, like, there was none of us, when we all talk about that game, we're like, they stopped running the ball. We don't even think about it. But for Arthur Millette, he never stopped thinking about it. He said, I spent 5 days in my room. 5 days in his room. And we can make fun of that or make jokes about it or whatever it is that you want to say, but, like, that's a real thing. And it's easy for a lot of us to just say simplistic things like, suck it up. Go answer questions. But it's not that easy. We are oversimplifying it. I can be empathetic. We should all be capable of being empathetic. We've all had times where in hindsight we're like, we didn't need to respond that way. We didn't need to send that email. We didn't need to say that thing to that person. We've all had those moments. And I don't know if Mark Andrews is just saying to himself, I know how I'm going to respond if somebody's like, if it feels like people are coming at me and I don't want to do that. Some of us have to learn how to fight with our partners, right? Some of us have to learn to go through like arguments with our spouse or our significant other or whatever it is, where we're like, okay, I need to remove myself right now because I'm going to end up saying something that I don't want to say. I'm not in a healthy place to have this conversation. I need 30 seconds. I need 3 minutes. I need 3 hours. I need 3 days. And then let's sit down and talk about it. It could be with a coworker. It could just be with whoever. We all have been there. So when we yell and when we think we're saying something, this is wrong. Mark Andrews needs to face the music. What do you mean face the music? Do you think Mark Andrews doesn't know that he dropped the ball and he had a bad fumble? Like, are we informing him of that? I don't even know what the relevant questions would be. How you handling it? I don't even know what, if Mark Andrews said, I want to call into your show today, I wouldn't even necessarily want to do it. I say that all the time. I don't like doing the. Go interview a coach that just lost a big game. Tell me how much fun that is. I assume they did one last night with Marcus Freeman. I don't know. I assume. I don't think it was fun. Dan Wolken from USA Today said the locker room scene was bizarre when Notre Dame lost the game. Okay, what is it supposed to be like? And I've been in losing locker rooms. I've been in locker rooms after big losses. I recognize it's different for some guys are just like, all right, whatever. Tomorrow I'll be at and Kyle Hamilton was at the Notre Dame game last night. Other guys, they don't get over it. And certainly if you feel like you played a part. Lamar cussed a little bit more than he normally does on Sunday night. That's how he handled it. Other guys, it's going to be different. I just think that we live in a society where we're all just supposed to have a binary take. The take is Mark Andrews needs to talk. To do what? What are you getting out of that?
You want him to say sorry? Is that
yeah, like what to do what? What do we not know? Like, wait. So, Mark, what happened there? I dropped the ball. Mark, what happened on the fumble? I fumbled the ball. I thought I was going to make a bigger play to the outside, and I was reckless, and I fumbled the ball, and it sucks. But do you feel better now? Well, it's almost like they didn't lose. Mark Andrews talked about it. So that makes up for it. Like, what does that do for us? And again, knowing what I do for a living, I can say the reporter wants it. But to make some take like Mark Andrews has to, or he's failed, when I also recognize that mental health is, it's kind of separated from reality. It feels very much like fall in line. This is the way things work. We have the power. You've got to talk to us. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but that's not where the power is. And again, it's complicated. I think a good thing might be for the Ravens to. It does become awkward now because that's an informal setting is probably better for that. Like in the locker room, it's probably better for that. Let's just get this over with. Now, the Ravens tried to suggest hey, Mark was sorry he wasn't, able to talk to you guys. He was hoping that we could do that. Now I feel like it's a press conference. It feels like it's a state event. Like you're standing, let's talk about our enemies. Let's talk about we're going to go fight with Syria or something like that. Then it becomes I don't think you want to do that. I think that it would be crazy to do that. Acting like because a guy dropped a football, he needs to have a Kobe Bryant press conference to address his.
Yeah. I mean, now it feels like the best thing that we could probably get from him is maybe an Instagram post, at the end of the week, where he's just some sort of reflection. But again, he doesn't even have to do that. He doesn't have to do anything. So it's
correct. It's what it is, man. The Ravens lost, and so we're just kind of looking for other things to talk about. And the people that have jobs to do, and I can be empathetic for them as well. The people that have jobs to do wanted to talk to Mark Andrews. And I'm empathetic that they weren't able to talk to Mark Andrews, and they feel like that their responsibility as a reporter is to talk to the person who was significantly involved in the result of the game. So I get it. I get the feeling. But is there an obligation? I don't know. A lot of people have pointed out, he was wearing the captain's patch. How can you be a captain if you're not willing to be accountable? Do you think he's not? Do you think that Mark Andrews is texting his guys that wasn't my fault? Like, do you think that's what's going on? Genuinely? I don't know if he talked to the team or what he said on the sidelines after it happened. Like, I have no idea.
You think he's out there saying, you should have given it to Derek. Why'd you
Right?
give it to
Like,
he wanted the ball, I'm sure.
Like Chris Sims was doing a bit like, it was Lamar made a bad throw. I'm like, what the like, what are we? And like, could Lamar have thrown it quicker? Maybe, but it changes not the result of what happened. He made a perfect throw, or damn good enough. I guess maybe you say that could have been up higher. I don't know, but he made a plenty good enough throw. But I just think the Ravens lost, and so we're upset that the Ravens lost, and we just want somebody to take it out on, and so now it's easy to pile on Mark Andrews. It's easy. Oh, he dropped the ball, and he won't talk afterwards. Doesn't sound like somebody that's worth $16 million to me.
Maybe they're right. I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. Stop. It's not. What? That's a different. There's a different conversation about what they're going to do about Mark Andrews, and I'm not going to join you guys. Like, if that's what they do because they feel like they. And somebody said, "Well, this you lose Mark Andrews, go get T. Higgins."
How come I mean, were people wanting to cut Zay Flowers last year too? Like, what's?
No, but this is a more complicated conversation because of his cap number and because of where it is a more complicated conversation. Where even if Mark Andrews had caught those balls and, like, let's just say Josh Allen goes down and scores anyway, and the Bills win, there would still be a more complicated conversation.
I guess my point is that because I feel like the large the majority of these voices that are speaking probably don't have that in mind.
I think you'd be surprised.
Okay.
I think this topic started coming up earlier in the season, when Mark Andrews was not as that there was a thought that, like, this is just the end of the road for Mark Andrews in Baltimore. And again, to the point, like, would it be loud today if he hadn't had the game that he had on Sunday night? Probably not. But it would still exist. In looking at the Ravens salary cap situation, there are only so many places they can go to get money. And they don't have a lot of it. And Mark Andrews is one of the places where they can go to get money. And so I get why it's coming up. And, you can convince yourself, as Brian brought up, that, like, not only could you get money, but maybe you could get draft pick. If you trade him, you can get draft picks too. And now, you've helped yourself in multiple ways. Like, you can work through all of that. And some of it is, we all see the same thing in Isaiah Likely. We all look at Isaiah Likely and say, that guy is a star. He's not a good second tight end. He's a star football player. Now, to be fair, I thought Trey Burton was a star once upon a time. When Trey Burton was the second tight end in Philadelphia and they made a run to winning a Super Bowl, I would have given up anything for Trey Burton. Like, that was my singular offseason priority. Now,
they didn't use him right. That's
what? It's not that they didn't use. They used him. He was great in Philadelphia. They just had, who the hell was there? Zach Ertz. They just had another tight end. And so it made sense that he was going to hit the open market. Like, you can't pay both of them. And Brian McFarland's point about, like, hey, Isaiah Likely is going to come up for a contract, even if they're both willing to play together, how much money can you pay to two tight ends? It's the Patrick Queen, Roquan Smith thing. We can say they're both, but, like, can you invest that much money at one position? It is a complicated conversation. My first thought is you try to figure it out.
To keep both.
For this year.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And kind of go from there. But it's easy for me to say that. Like, it might not be that simplistic. If it's black and white, if the Ravens come to you and say, we can't do both, we're going to have to commit to one or the other, then it really does get interesting. It's not that binary today, but if they made it that binary to you, like if they did, hey, you're a consultant now, we either can commit to Mark Andrews, give him an extension, and then we wouldn't be able to pay Isaiah Likely when he comes up for a deal next year. or we can go ahead and move on from Mark Andrews now and commit to Isaiah Likely and maybe even get him at a favorable deal. You know, if it's that binary, it becomes like I don't know. The sound decision of the two probably is going with the younger guy. So it's complicated, man. But it doesn't matter to me at all, like in that conversation, whether or not Mark Andrews spoke to the media after that has no impact on that conversation. All right, we got one more break to take, right?
Yes.
All right, we'll take the break. Maybe we'll do 5 plays.
Okay.
It's a tough day. Maybe we'll do 5 plays when we come back in. And I feel like there was something else I had on my list. I wrote down. Oh God, trivia last night. Like one of the questions, straight shoot, was who are the two quarterbacks that have led the Ravens to Super Bowls? Straight shoot. That was a question that was asked.
So they're just trying to take shots at Lamar, I guess.
I have no idea what that. It was so. Well, I assume they wrote the game before. They normally.
They okay.
It was bizarre. I'm like, am I missing something? Like, why is this a question? I also forgot Mark Sears' name. One of the rounds was name this college basketball player, and they put up
Mark Sears, Alabama.
They put up Alabama. I'm like, oh God. I got all the rest of them. Like it was everybody that you would. It was Cooper Flagg and
Hunter Dickinson.
No, it was Cooper Flagg, Paige Beckers, Juju Watkins, and Derek Queen. Like the rest of them, no problem. But I swear to God, I'm like, I don't remember who that is. So we only got 4 out of 5 in that round. That was shameful. And there was one other sports question. It was something about a letter. Hang on a second.
Something about the letter in the alphabet?
Hang on. No, yeah, a letter in the alphabet. Wait a second. I got it.
Okay.
Chill.
All right.
I got it. The answer to this is a single letter in the alphabet. It abbreviates a playing position in the NHL, NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball.
That would be the letter C.
Of course it would be the letter C, yes. One of the guys on our team was like, right, yeah, because it's center field. I said, yep, nailed it, buddy. You got it.
As long as he got, doesn't matter the process.
Got it. That's
100%
the reason why C is the abbreviation of a baseball position is for center field. All right, we'll come back and wind things down on GCR.
The ultimate fan experience awaits you at Sports and Social Maryland. See how we're raising the sports bar with our massive 100-foot media wall featuring 40 HD TVs and a 47-foot big screen. Bet on your favorite teams and this year's biggest events at the FanDuel Sportsbook while enjoying your favorite beers and cocktails, plus our delicious takes on bar food classics. Visit Sports and Social at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland at Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Driving in Maryland? Did you know an Easy Pass from DriveEasyMD.com can save you time and money? Of course you did, because you are a thrifty driver. An antenna reads your Easy Pass transponder and automatically deducts the toll from your Easy Pass account. Learn more at DriveEasyMD.com.
Treat yourself and taste the Baltimore tradition that is the legendary Costas Inn. Hey, it's Stan the Fan Charles. For over 50 years, the Costas Inn has been a Baltimore original, dishing out their amazingly scrumptious, fat, award-winning crab cakes and steamed crabs. Every season is crab season at Costas, so make your plans now by calling 410-477-1975 and reserve your taste of heaven. Sit back, crack some crabs, and watch the Ravens chase down another title on Costas' 15 TVs. On Monday nights, Costas offers their half-pound jumbo lump crab cake with 2 sides for under $30, and there are nightly specials Monday through Friday. So head on down to the Costas Inn at 4100 North Point Boulevard or visit them at CostasInn.com.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
COVID-19 and flu viruses are circulating in Maryland. But don't worry, protection is within arm's reach. Protect your health with this year's COVID-19 and flu shots. It's safe and convenient to get them both at the same time. Flex your protection. For more information, visit health.maryland.gov/vaccines.
This message paid for by the Maryland Department of Health.
Coming back in here with Glenn and the other guy, Garrett, whatever his name is. You know who they are.
Best of issue of Press Box still available at your neighborhood Royal Farms, any of the hundreds of locations around town where you find Press Box. Read it all, pressboxonline.com/bestof. All right, let's do 5 plays. I will
Say
not
quick.
I don't have no. We got to do it quickly. I got other things I got to work on. And I'm not really interested in fighting. My number 5 is the 4th down stop on or not the 4th down that they didn't stop. Sorry, on the Bills' first drive of the game. And I kind of called my shot on this one, particularly because you had just made the stop on the play before, and particularly because you knew it was coming. Like I'm not trying to pretend like a 4th and 2 is easy. Like it's 2 yards, but you knew what they were doing. You knew exactly what the play call was going to be. And it's the opportunity cost more than anything else. Like if you make that stop, then you're up 7-0. You're getting the ball back. You're feeling yourself. Everything's going your way. You have an opportunity to take the crowd out of the game and to take them out of what they wanted. Like you have the opportunity to try to make them more one-dimensional. It's an opportunity cost in that moment. In that moment, it's all right in front of you. And then you give up the conversion on 4th down. Again, not to say that it's not 4th and 7. It's not something like it's not 3rd and 18. It's not absurd, but you knew what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
They had just done it the play before.
You are 1 for 1. Yeah.
Okay.
I was between this one and the 3rd and 8 from earlier in the drive where they hit it over Stevens to Shakir there.
Yeah.
I was between that one and this one. But yeah, I mean it was the opening drive, a really big opportunity. As you mentioned, Tavius Robinson just had the huge stop on 3rd and 1. There was no doubt that they were going to do the same thing,
Yep.
and they had the running back like motion out wide. So Roquan was lined up as like an outside corner because he was playing with like Ray Davis or whoever, or Ty Johnson, whoever the running back was. And so Malik Harrison was the only guy in the middle, and I mean he had no chance. I mean maybe he could have, but he had no chance at getting a stop on this play. And then Bills obviously went on to score on the drive, and there was no shot at trying to get the momentum back in the first quarter there. So yeah, that was my number 5 as well.
My number 4, they fall behind 14-7, but again, moving the ball just fine down into the red zone, and 1st and goal from the 2, lose a yard, all good. But and we can get through the debates about I wonder if you're just doing pushes, everybody will just keep saying you just keep giving the ball to Derrick Henry, whatever it is. But again, it's the result. It's not even about the play call, it's the result. What absolutely cannot happen is losing 5 yards and now making it 3rd and extraordinarily difficult. You can't lose 5 yards when you're 2nd and goal inside the 5. That can't happen. But alas, that's exactly what happened. They fail to score a touchdown. They settle for 3, and they're playing catch-up the rest of the way.
You're 2 for 2 so far. Well done. Same thing. Like it is. You had such a high, I guess not really that high of a negative potential, but it ended up, the worst case scenario happened on this play and backed them up into outside of 4-down territory, trying to go for it 4 times at the goal line, and instead they have to kick, and as you said, chasing points the rest of the way. So that is my number 4 as well.
The rest of them then become very easy to me. Like these are the only 2 there was really any variance on. Number 3 is the 2-point conversion. It's the drop.
So same.
Yeah, and the only if you want to, somebody would say, well, that was the last thing that happened. So yeah, but as I've said a million times before, there was still so much time left that even if they had gotten it, I don't think they're winning the game. Now, you want them to get it and have the chance to, but it can't be number 1 on the list. If it had happened with 6 seconds left and they were going to go to overtime, then we could talk about it a little bit more. Because it happened with that much time left on the clock, I have to acknowledge that it's impactful. You would have liked the chance to send the defense out to try to get a stop, but I can't put it over the other two. It's number 3.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I still kind of, obviously it's easier now since Andrews dropped the ball, but I still think, Henry had a way to score if they had just gone to the left side, because it was wide open. They were very bare, the Bills defense was on that left side. But yeah, I mean, the play worked, and Andrews couldn't grab the ball, so it's unfortunate.
The Derrick Henry drop from early in the game did not make my list, by the way, but one that certainly I thought about.
Yeah.
Number 2 is the Mark Andrews fumble. And I can listen to an argument if you flip-flop the two. I really can, because they were both that significant.
Guess we're not going to fight.
It's the exact same list.
Yeah.
I didn't really think it was all that hard this week, honestly. Like, the only debate to me, like, if somebody said the Andrews because of where it occurred in the game, if they said that's why I had it higher on the list than Lamar's fumble, but, like, Lamar's fumble was such a dramatic.
You were going to score 7 points.
Probably, but you were at least going to score 3
and have a lead,
right? You know what I mean?
It was
like
7 points the other way.
It's such a dramatic turn of events that it's the highest volatility play of the game, and that's the reason why it ends up being high. Like, and again, it was the same thing. You're going to go back in front. You're playing from ahead. You then allowed them the opportunity to do the 2-for-1 thing, which they didn't take advantage of, and that's how you stayed in the game. But like when you get the ball first, you've got to play from ahead. If you fall behind, you run the risk of it turning into a mess. And this was the play. This was the reason why they played from behind the rest of the way. So, look, they were both huge. They were both major, huge volatility plays within the course of a game. But the bigger volatility one was the Lamar fumble. So.
Yeah.
That's why that's 1, and the Mark Andrews fumble is number 2.
I unfortunately agree. Yeah.
Great. I'm so glad we could agree about this particular topic. We'll get him up at Glenn Clark. I told you we weren't going to fight.
I guess you were right.
We'll get him up
we'll
get him up at glennclarkradio.com a little bit later on. I'll need a minute. I was going to finish writing my. I've just. It's what it is. It's what it is. Anyway, we'll get him up at glennclarkradio.com a little bit later on. 5 plays also brought to you by the CIAA tournament. Griffin?
That's right. It is coming back. Baltimore is welcoming the excitement of the Food Lion CIAA men's and women's basketball tournament to CFG Bank Arena from February 25th through March 1st. Tickets, they're available now. Get them at Ticketmaster.com. Again, Ticketmaster.com for your tickets to the Food Lion CIAA men's and women's basketball tournament at CFG Bank Arena, February 25th through March 1st.
All right. I guess we can go ahead and do a tidbit. Tidbit is brought to you today by the Stan the Fan Variety Hour, which returns this week. Stan is going to be catching up with Chris Corman of the Baltimore Banner tomorrow at 4:30, Facebook.com/PressBoxSports. If you miss it live, YouTube.com/PressBoxOnline, PressBoxOnline.com/video.
Let's go with Jay Kuda had an interesting one after so the team that had the most total yards in the game lost every single game in the divisional round. Yes, yeah, that is so. Maybe you got to be more boring. Don't do as much.
Of course, next year will be the year it's completely different.
Right.
Next year. And like there's some irony there that like the Lions Commanders story is not because one of those teams was less aggressive. It was just because the Lions turned the ball over.
Yeah.
Like that's.
Which I guess similar to the Ravens.
The Commanders didn't decide they weren't going to be aggressive in that game. They were plenty aggressive.
Paul Hembo had one this morning. Teams that won the national title after losing their end of the regular season rivalry game. So Ohio State obviously losing to Michigan. The last time that a team ended up winning the national championship after losing their final regular season game. It's only happened 5 times.
I don't.
It was 2017. Alabama lost to Auburn in the that year.
I do remember that.
2007 was when LSU won the national championship, and they lost to Arkansas in their week 13, week 14, whatever the week that is. 96 Florida lost.
That would have
to
just been
Florida
a
State.
2-team. They still got into the national championship game despite it being a 2-team. That's
Florida in 96 also lost their to Florida State.
That was before they were even national championship.
They just said, this is the best team.
That was, the AP got to decide who a hell of a thing that we had in college football. We were like, hey, this is why, like, the world has changed. Media had so much power then. Media got to decide who the national champion was in college football.
Who would have been this year?
Oregon.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, I mean, if we still had all these games?
Well, I guess we don't, so no. Yeah.
This
so
this is an interesting question. So they would have decided
no,
because they would have decided the national champion after the bowl games. So it would have been after the quarterfinal round.
Sure, yeah.
Would have been the last thing we had to work with. So Penn State? Boy, this would have been fascinating, right? Like,
so Ohio State had 2
now
losses.
also
they beat Oregon.
Here's the other problem. We still got matchups between good teams. Sometimes you'd have like the Sugar Bowl, and the Sugar Bowl would be between the number 1 team and the number 8 team.
Gotcha.
And that was the last. I guess ironically, somebody would say, "Well, that's what we had this year," because Ohio State
have
was
like the 2 and 4 seed going, or the number 2 team and the number 4 team. Or
you
something
could have
like
anything.
Rose Bowl.
Like you could have, because it was all conference based. So your conference champion was tied into the whatever these bowl games were, and you were just left with like okay, well, you watch them all play in one more game. Now, who do you think is best? Oh, and it would get really crazy when after, like, if one bowl game was the last bowl game of the year, then like after that game, the coaches and like the players would get on there and just start campaigning. Oh, who do you think would win a hypothetical matchup between us and Michigan? You really think Michigan was beating us? Like it was a wild time.
So maybe Notre Dame? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe Notre Dame might have been national champions. 100%.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, and Notre Dame also in 1943 was the first. They lost to Great Lakes Navy in their end of
there
regular
also
season
was a
finale.
time where they didn't include bowl games.
Gotcha.
Maryland went under the 1953 national championship is the only national championship that Maryland actually claims. They lost their bowl game that year, but they voted on national champion before the bowl games.
So it's like the MVP where they just voted on it
wild
a month before the end of the last game.
Yeah.
Those are the 5 national title winners after losing their regular season finale. And then also Matt Stafford, now after playing his 10th career playoff game, he had been averaging over 300 yards a game. He is now averaging 299.6. There's one player that has averaged 300 yards, passing yards a game in his playoff career. And I guess we can just do like the top 5 here, I guess, or top 6. Let's do top 6. Most yards per game.
Kurt Warner.
Postseason career. Kurt Warner does, in fact, have the most yards per game, 304. Only player to average over 300 yards in his postseason career.
The only reason I thought that because I thought what was that crazy, like, was it them in Carolina when he was in Arizona when they just scored like 1 billion points in a playoff game?
Against Jake Delhomme?
Might have been.
Yeah.
I remember we were with the Ravens somewhere, and I didn't even get to watch the game, but, like, I think we got on the bus or whatever, and we were like, what? Like, what's going on in that game? Could have been the Packers. I don't remember. I'll try Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers is 8th all time. I'm looking for the top 6 here. I mean, we could do top 8 if you want. But.
No. Mahomes.
Mahomes is 5th, yes. Just under 280 yards per game in his 19-game postseason career.
I guess I should say Montana, but I don't think it's Montana. Montana.
It's not Montana.
Yeah, it's just a different era.
He's 12th.
It's still okay.
Yeah, 250 yards per game.
How about Favre?
No Favre.
How about
17th?
How about Drew Brees?
Drew Brees is 3rd. Okay. Warner, Stafford, Brees. Mahomes at 5.
Ben Roethlisberger?
Big Ben is 11th.
It's different because early in his career he wasn't. Later in his career he was
just slinging it,
slinging that thing. Tom Brady?
Tom Brady is 6th. Yeah, he has the same amount of yards.
That was confusing to me because there's a similar story with Roethlisberger. Like early in his career, different guy, but he went to the playoffs more later in his career.
279, so tied with Mahomes.
Okay.
Yeah, but 48 games for Brady, 19 for Mahomes. Brady's played 3 seasons in the postseason. So looking for 4. Looking for a 4th
Peyton
guy.
Manning.
Peyton Manning 7th. Yeah. So Manning 7th, Rodgers 8th.
Elway.
So we will get the top 8 in here. No Elway.
Jim Kelly.
No Kelly.
Phil Rivers.
This guy not as no Rivers. This guy not as like long. He's also only played 10 playoff games. So, but he's averaged 287
Carson
yards.
Palmer. No,
not
he didn't play
Carson
that. He did
Palmer.
not play that many playoff games. Donovan McNabb.
Not McNabb.
All right, let's
21st.
Let's come up with another one that can help get us there.
Okay. Let's see. He played.
Troy Aikman played more than 10.
Yeah, not Aikman.
Matt Hasselbeck.
Not Hasselbeck.
Russ Wilson.
This guy was a not Russell Wilson. Let's see. I'm trying to think of what's a
Jared Goff.
This team does not Jared Goff. Does not exist. Yeah, is that gonna give it away?
This team does not exist
any longer.
The Oilers.
Mm-hmm.
Pastorini.
Mm-hmm.
Warren Moon.
Warren
Moon.
Moon.
He only played for the Oilers for a little bit.
I thought he played like the first half of his. What was his playoff history with?
That's a good question too. Actually,
Yeah,
that's a good question. I mean, he played for the Vikings for a while.
He played like 3 seasons. He played 3 seasons in Minnesota.
Right.
And before that, he was like 10 years in Houston.
Was it 10 years? I didn't think it was 10.
Maybe.
I didn't think it was 10 years.
1, 2,
You might
3,
be
4,
right.
5,
Yeah, maybe
6,
completely
7,
right.
8, 9. That was 10.
Okay.
10 seasons
All right.
with the,
All right. I'll
with
give
the
that to you.
Oilers.
All right. Fair enough.
Yeah, and then Josh Allen, Matt Ryan, right at the top 10 here since
all right.
named half the guys on the list
Very
anyway.
Good. Now let's get totally tubular.
Have you ever thought of taking a cruise to these wonderful destinations with sunny skies and beautiful beaches? Well, wait no longer. We're ready for you to cruise from the Cruise Maryland Terminal.
Have a little phrase that you can go from baggage to margarita in about 15 minutes.
Choose fun with an array of destinations, onboard activities, entertainment, and world-class cuisine.
Contact your travel agent and book your cruise today. Let your adventure begin.
Do me a favor. We missed something in one of the quotes from Brian McFarland. We got to clean that. He just look at that and figure out how we can clean that up and tell him I'm sorry. All right, let's get tubular. Here's what's coming up. Baseball Hall of Fame announcement is this afternoon. Well, it's actually early this evening. It's at 6 o'clock. They start the show, I don't know, somewhere in the mid-afternoon, and then the announcement is just after 6 o'clock on MLB Network. We know Ichiro. We're pretty certain about Billy Wagner. It looks like CC Sabathia, and I think that's going to be it. That the last time I checked. Oh, let's go back. Oh, Carlos Beltran is still at 80%, so a chance for Carlos Beltran to join him. We will find out. Andrew Jones sits at 72%, so almost certainly not going to get in this year. But the Hall of Fame announcement, 6 o'clock on MLB Network. Big Ten hoops tonight, Minnesota, Iowa at 9 o'clock, Washington, Oregon at 11, Peacock for Ohio State, Purdue at 7:30, Wisconsin, UCLA at 9:30. Video game golf, 7 o'clock on ESPN. The rest of the college basketball, find at glennclarkradio.com. Monumental for Capitals, Oilers at 9. Monumental 2 for Wizards, Lakers at 10:30. TNT and True TV for Knicks, Nets at 7:30. Sixers, Nuggets at 10. ESPN Plus and Hulu for Hurricane Stars at 8. CBS Champions League this afternoon, Bologna and Borussia Dortmund at 3 o'clock. Australian Open coverage starts at 7 o'clock on ESPN Plus, 9 o'clock on ESPN2. The two other women's quarterfinals are tonight. Madison Keys against Alina Svitolina and Emma Navarro and Iga Swiatek at 7:30 and 9 o'clock. And then the first men's quarterfinal of the evening, American Ben Shelton taking on Lorenzo Sonego. If you missed it early this morning, Novak Djokovic, 37 years old, 4 sets, defeats Carlos Alcaraz. So it'll be Djokovic, Zverev. I'm nervous. Carlos Alcaraz, 1, is regressed. Like, he's regressed. And then 2, Djokovic looked beatable today. I'm very nervous. That means that he's going to lose to Alex Zverev, which would just be a grotesque way for this tournament to go. Anyway,
at least Jess Pagula lost, so
there is that, and that clearly helped. That helped us a great deal.
Well, just need Pagula's lose something this week.
CW for WWE NXT tonight at 8. Non-sports.
A few things. Adam Scott's going to be on Seth Meyers along with Julia Fox because she's in some horror movie with Lucy Liu. Julia Fox is.
Which one is Julia Fox?
She dated Kanye West for a minute.
Oh, that one, right?
Yeah,
I vaguely remember.
And then apparently she's an actor now. So I don't know. I don't know if the movie's gonna be any good. People seem to. It's a horror movie with. You're gonna guess not. Yeah. It looks interesting. And it's called Presence is the name of the movie. I guess it comes out next week or something. The same guy that directed Ocean's 11, Steven Soderbergh, is directing this one.
Steven Soderbergh is a hell of a director.
St. Dennis Medical, new episode of that on NBC. Sterling K. Brown and Jason Tatum will be on Jimmy Kimmel tonight.
They, of course, are plugging the Saturday Night Live 50th anniversary special.
Oh, really? Yeah. Good for them. Good for them.
I
guess this. So now, so it wasn't last week. Tonight is the finale of AFC North Hard Knocks.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
There's another episode?
I believe so. That's what
I was actually looking on that because I would have highlighted it in the.
Oh, okay.
I don't think anybody's going to want to watch this.
Yeah,
that's
there's a good chance. There's also Blink Twice is streaming on Prime Video. And something else. Gladiator 2 is also streaming on Paramount Plus now.
For free?
Yeah, with Paramount Plus. But
Well,
yes,
I do have
yes.
All right.
Gladiator 2 and Blink Twice, both streaming.
Well, I will look at that. Very good. All right, that's it?
That is it. Yes.
Excellent. Thanks today to, I really appreciate Patrick Stevens in those circumstances. Also, thanks to Brian McFarland. Great conversation with him and to Mark Clayton. We'll get it up in the greatest hits section of the
Can You Take Me Higher?
tab at GlennClarkRadio.com. Tomorrow on the program,
Sean Merriman is going to join us.
Is he back or is he still
back.
in Florida?
Yeah, he is back.
Not the best day for that, but all right. We'll get Sean had some thoughts. Because he's a former Bill, he was rooting for the Bills, but he had some thoughts about what he saw from the Ravens. We'll get those and stuff and things tomorrow on the program. Tonight, 6 to 9 for Reed and Glenn on 105.7 The Fan, by the way. Book Club for Chiefsaholic starts off the show. Thanks to Everyday Press Box, all of our great sponsors and partners, including Live Casino and Hotel, Cruise Maryland, Crown Trophy, Easy Pass, Royal Farms, CIAA Tournament, HelpMyGamblingProblem.org, Costa Sin, MSAA, Maryland Sports, Baltimore Orioles, your local Toyota dealer, buyatoyota.com. Thanks to Griffin at Griffin_Bass. Follow us Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Glenn Clark Radio. Have a great Tuesday evening. Go nobody, right? Yeah, go nobody. Duke sucks.